We're back.
Hey there. Yes. Yes.
It's been this long.
So
What's going on?
for catching up the viewers to
Yes.
what we were talking about ahead of time, about 2 hours ago, I
Yes.
posted, I like tweeted, I created the stream ready to go,
Yep.
and you said, "Oh, firing on all cylinders! Like
Yes.
this is I'm doing like all the things ahead of time, so I don't do it last minute."
Yeah.
And then I forgot.
Well, I will say, because I thought you had everything in order, I was like, oh, I'll just go out for lunch, grab some stuff, go to the bank.
Yeah.
And I also ended up going to
Oh,
the store
okay.
and being a little bit late. So yes, I
Okay,
kind of ran
good,
home.
good.
I'm a bit sweaty. I don't know about you.
No,
That's why you're
no,
fixing your
I'm,
hair. But I definitely had like
yeah,
beads of sweat
I'm sweaty. I ran all the way from over there, like right there to here,
all the way from over there.
all the way, all 2 feet.
I
Yeah.
assume it's like this in Washington, Seattle right now, but it's like it's that weird weather where it's humid and not too hot, but all of the
Yeah.
stores have decided to crank their heat. So I was boiling. I was wearing like, the nice rainproof jacket and stuff.
Right,
It's trying to get
right.
quite warm, trying to get home fast, and I was just super sweaty.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah, I want to say people here are like sensible, and so if it's hot outside, doesn't matter if it's supposed to be cold,
Right.
if it's hot or if it's cold, well, whichever way around, it's
Yep.
it's they're not gonna go crazy the wrong way. Like
It's
I
definitely the
remember
opposite here.
being in Rome on the first official day of winter, and all of a sudden people are out in like thick coats and scarves and stuff, and I'm in shorts and a t-shirt because it's hot.
Apparently, this is the outfit of North Americans traveling. It's like shorts and a t-shirt, and
Yeah.
other countries laugh at us because like they
Yeah.
don't want to see our hairy legs and stuff. But
Yeah, and I don't
honestly,
care
yeah,
about my hairy legs.
me either. Actually,
Yeah.
laugh all you want as long as I'm
Yeah.
not boiling. I can't take
That's
it.
right.
I can't.
I've been in the Musée d'Orsay in Paris,
Nice.
realizing it's too hot, and of course I always wear convertible cargo pants, the very fashionable.
Oh, yeah.
And
So you
and
unzip the bottom part, kind of thing.
unzip the bottom part and take off my pant legs in the middle of the museum. I sat down and like, this is too hot.
Just tell them it's high fashion. Put them on your arms,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah. Tie them as little bangles. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So
So
have you ever
yeah.
had the like spur of the moment decision when you're in the Mac store or Apple store and you decide you want something and then you just buy it?
Only with like things under $50. I have had that.
This is key, actually. That's a really good rule because my problem is I'll look at the store for months, maybe years in some cases, and then just get in there and finally decide I'm going to pull the trigger today.
Yeah.
So that's what happened. Why I was late was I was unboxing this Mac Studio that I got in front of me. Hopefully you can see it.
Nice.
It is heavy. I had to carry it home as well. That's one of the reasons I was sweating. But it is something that I thought a lot about. And you asked me just before we started if I got the 192 gig version.
Yeah.
And I didn't because I noticed the memory costs are just really high. And in terms of what I use it for, in all honesty, aside from machine learning and stuff like that, for what I use it for, I probably need 32 gigabytes of memory, probably 64.
You didn't.
I went 64.
Okay.
I went 64. Yeah, I know. I know. You're thinking about the precious models, right? Yeah. So I don't think I can run. Was it Falcon 140B or whatever? But I might be able
180.
to run 180. Sorry.
Yeah.
I think I can run 70B, but not 180.
Yeah.
I'll live.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, honestly, the biggest selling feature for me is that it's got 4 actual Thunderbolt ports and a 10 gig Ethernet port. And finding that in any other Mac, unfortunately, is impossible. I've looked high and low. I've even got the OWC Dock Pro and stuff like that. And I'm still running out of Thunderbolt ports. I at least need a spare so I can plug in the random thing into it. And I'm really not a fan of the laptops with 3 yet. Like I actually need 4. And I know we talked about the MagSafe adapter and the power, and I kind of laughed at the time, but I'm on your side now. Like I'm fully converted. Just give me another Thunderbolt port. I don't need MagSafe.
Yeah. The MagSafe was such a stupid idea. Stupid thing to put back in there. I mean, or I mean, be like the MagSafe on an iPhone. If there were like a little pad I could stick underneath my iPad, my Mac,
no problem.
And awesome.
No
Don't take
problem.
away one of my ports.
That is the issue, actually. Yeah. So if they added MagSafe and I kept 4 Thunderbolt 4 ports, I'd be happy
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they charge anyway.
Yeah.
And I do use the charger in a Thunderbolt
Yeah.
port. I never use the MagSafe port just to
No.
collect dust for me. But I
Yeah.
mean, hey, I'm not going to use it. I also don't use some of the other ports on there, but I do need Thunderbolt ports. They're like
Yeah.
they're key.
Yeah.
It's such a big deal. I realize that like I've been using Thunderbolt for a while, and I've been a convert since like day one. So for me,
Yep.
like these fast external low latency ports are amazing.
Right.
But because I've bought into this life on Windows, PC, and Linux,
Mm-hmm.
I really just want to have the ports because all of my
Yeah.
accessories are there, and I can just plug in and plug out. And going from a computer that already had 4 ports to one
Yeah.
that had 3 was painful.
Yeah.
It meant getting a new dock in order to handle
Yep.
some of the displays and stuff like that. And yeah, just that was for the work computer, and for my home computer, I could not.
Yeah.
I just can't stomach it. It's hard to
Yeah.
give away functionality you've already got, right? It's difficult.
Right. Yeah, and some people will say, well, you know, the downside of these machines is now you need dongles. It was like, no, why?
Right.
I mean, you don't spend $2,000, $4,000 on a machine and then skimp out on not buying, you know, an extra
Right.
$20 cable. Like, I only carry
I know. I know.
It's so
It's just a difference in
infuriating.
thinking, right? So
Yeah.
there's also the people who go at a computer purchase as if it's one computer, and you've only got one
Right.
computer that can do everything.
Right.
And I think that's what we had the luxury of not having to do that, which is nice. So being able to have like a Photoshop Lightroom computer is what I was really looking for.
Right.
Being able to do anything else on it is gravy. Because I do run like Stable Diffusion as a plugin for Photoshop, as an example. So like having some capability there is handy.
Right.
I'm not sure if you've run across this in Photoshop before, but depending on the type of photo that you've taken, when you go to do things like expand the canvas, it will actually say that it cannot do it because of the content of your image, regardless of the content of your image, because it doesn't know how to flag content properly. So there's a feedback button that you can send, like, now you flagged this incorrectly, but it does happen. And it's specifically for me, any portrait that starts like shoulder up, that is like shoulders face kind of thing, it often will not understand what's in the photo. And it's like, no, just not going to help you here. And all I need is a little bit more headroom, you know, and you should have just backed up a little bit in the studio.
Right.
So I just use Stable Diffusion for that. It's awesome. We'll just like expand your canvas a tiny bit. I think the results are better than Photoshop. Photoshop can do like, is it 1024 by 1024 blocks? Anything larger than that loses detail really quickly. But yeah, I just need to get better at photography, honestly.
Yeah. I haven't opened up Photoshop in like a year, 2 years.
Really?
I mean, I paid for the Lightroom.
Yeah, the photo bundle.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I have it, but I never touch it.
You haven't used that new beta feature that I'm talking about? Wow.
No.
I'm amazed.
No. Because I mean, I use most of the time I'm using either Pixelmator or the one from starts with an A, I think.
Oh, they made like a bunch of tools.
Yeah.
Shoot, I should know.
No. It's photo and designer and
I know. I
publisher.
Affinity, yes.
Yeah. Axiom.
Affinity Studio. That's all I have in my brain was Axiom. Affinity Designer, I've heard, is quite good. As someone who really likes Illustrator, I've heard it's actually pretty good. I mean, honestly, I really like Macromedia Freehand, but that's a bit of a callback. But I do feel like Designer is more similar to Freehand than Illustrator, for me at least, which is nice. So it's got like, instead of all the nice graphical kind of whiz bang anti-alias stuff, you can actually just draw vectors, which is huge.
Right.
And to do that in Illustrator these days is quite difficult.
Yeah.
But Freehand always had a mode where it's like a low memory mode where you could just use anchor points and vectors, and it wouldn't draw in the stuff for you, which was amazing for layout. And then you could go in and apply your stroke and stuff like that. But we're talking about 2001, 2002 at this point in time. It's been a while since they bought Macromedia. But yeah, I'm surprised you haven't at least tried that new Photoshop feature. Do you know what it does? So it's essentially like in-painting and out-painting. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't
they've
know.
had variations on it for a while, and it's just a whole lot better than it was, where content fill, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, so I will say that content aware fill has been around for a while and is pretty good. The problem that it would often had would be the lines around the area, which is actually still a problem, even though people might not talk about it
Hmm.
in the new plugin, as well as it seemed to have issues with texture. So any type of texture, like a noise in your image, if you're adding something, it
Mm.
wouldn't get the noise right. What the new plugin does really well actually is to match the noise. So if you've got like an 800 ISO
Okay.
image, the
Right.
noise will apply, which is awesome, phenomenal. It will also do things like understand where lines are, which content aware fill really had an issue with anything with lines. If it
Yeah.
was a gradient, it would make a line, which is
Right.
absolutely what you're generally trying to avoid.
Right.
You want to make a contiguous color, and it would do the opposite what you wanted. So the Stable Diffusion kind of plugin
Yeah.
does that. I think it's called Firefly or Firefly Beta. Um, what it does not do though is that blending edge around your selection is still there, and you still have to go in and modify. It's actually quite annoying.
Mm.
So if you decide to do like a whole side, if you're doing like an outcrop, it will have a line where you've actually done the work, and you have to go in and edit it, and you can't do it
Mm.
again. It'll make it worse. It'll add more lines, so you've got to
Mm.
go in and like dodge and burn it or something like that to make it convincing. It's not as easy as one and done as you see on all the
Wow.
YouTube tutorials and stuff like that. They're
Right.
zoomed in at a certain level where you can't see it, but there's definitely a delineation. So it's not
Yeah.
perfect. It's definitely still beta quality. And
Yeah.
also whatever they're using to tag the images that you're working on is not correct.
Mm.
But whatever, I'm sure they'll figure it out. That being said, there are plugins that allow you to use like Automatic 1111 or what have you
Hmm.
inside of Photoshop, which is pretty
Mm.
nice. And then we'll call it to a web service and put the image back in, which is really handy. It's surprisingly handy to be able to like
Yeah.
tune a model on your photographs and put it in there.
Right.
I'm using the
Right.
default, but to be able to like keep working on something that's yours on your computer is
Hmm.
I don't
Hmm.
know.
Pretty
Maybe
cool.
this is for me, for my workflow, it was like
Yeah.
it's groundbreaking. As somebody who generally crops too much in the camera and not enough
Hmm.
outside, it's been a life changer.
Yeah. I for unless I really think about it, I do have a tendency of um putting the subject's face in the middle of
Right,
the frame and not
right,
realize, oh wait, I need to like focus and adjust exposure and then
right,
move down.
right.
And I always forget that.
The thing that spoils you on like a Sony camera, or I think some of the newer cameras from Canon, maybe Nikon as well, is that their focus points can get really high to the top of the frame, like
Mm-hmm.
really close actually.
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah, if I think
generally,
about that
yeah.
ahead of time, then I can,
Oh,
like
gotcha.
move the focus point up. But
Oh, yeah, there's no more moving focus points. If you're looking for the
oh,
eye,
it's
it
it.
does it for you
Oh, it's
automatically. Yeah,
okay.
it's
Oh,
that good.
right. Yeah, right, right.
Yeah, yeah,
There's
yeah.
looking for the eye, but I guess I don't know what I'm. I guess looking for the eye. Yeah, I don't do
Yeah,
as
yeah,
many
yeah.
portraits.
No, I get you.
That's
Like, it's
totally
it
why.
and it's until you've done it, like, you don't realize just
Yeah,
how much photography's
yeah,
changed by that tiny little thing. So then you can start thinking about composition. So
right.
you think you're smart like me, you put the head really close to the top of the frame, then you realize, oh yeah, I cut off their head actually. I can't get more head
Yeah,
back. What do I
yeah,
do? And Photoshop does an okay job, like especially if it's out of focus. It can do out
right.
of focus hair, no problem. Or if you've
Does
missed like just one finger or like half a hand or something, it can generate something that doesn't have 11 billion fingers. It looks okay.
yeah.
It looks all right.
Do most of the cameras still, or do any of the cameras track your eye movement to see what you're focusing on? Because I remember
Yes.
that being the cool feature of like the Canon EOS, like old professional camera back in I mean, this is when I was still working at a camera shop in late 80s, early 90s.
Right.
There were a few that did that tracked where are you focusing on, and therefore it'll move its focus point to that place within
Yeah.
a certain region.
Yeah. So I know, at least because I've used it, the Canon R3 does. I
Mm,
believe they may have other bodies that do. But the R3 did. It worked remarkably well for
hmm.
most of the tests I was doing. I had to turn it
Yeah.
off because I find that I look at other parts of the photo while composing, and I don't
Hmm.
want it to focus there. So I need to like give it a wink or something like, hey, don't
Right,
don't track
right.
this part. I'm about to like look around the scene, which I found frustrating. So it will
Yeah.
focus where you look. Awesome. If you're scanning the scene, like in architecture or something like
Right.
that, it might be a problem. For something like street, though, super handy. But at that point in time, like the R3's focus is really good anyway. But I think you're thinking of the EOS 5 had eye auto tracking way back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people with glasses complained. I think similarly in the R3, there were some issues with like transitions glasses that might be a little bit different. But apparently they do work through glasses, which is nice. We're getting there.
You're on regarding your Mac Ultra Studio.
Right. Yep.
Is it Ultra? No,
It is,
Mac
yep.
Studio.
I went Ultra.
So okay. And how much disk space?
It has 1 terabyte, which I know, but it's got a 10 gig port, and it'll be connected to a 30 terabyte 10 gig NAS.
I mean, one thing that always aggravates me is when people buy a machine and then undercut it with like just a relatively small disk or relatively small memory compared to what I mean, if you can afford it, because you're gonna maybe
8 terabyte version, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, maybe it's good enough for your needs right now, but 6 months and your needs change. And
I will say, because
especially if you can get somebody else to pay for it.
Yeah, well, that's not the case. I will say so I bought the Mac Pro, like the first Mac Pro I bought was in 2013, I think, with the launch of the trash can, the affectionately named trash can, which I loved to pieces. I know other people did not. I loved it. I went for, I think, 512, which served me for quite a long time, like a while actually. And the laptop I'm working on now is 1 terabyte as well, which served me for quite a long time. The thing that generally takes up space for me is like forgotten VMs. And I don't use that many VMs these days. Like Docker containers might stick around or what have you. But those were what took a lot of the memory. These days, it's typically just like a temporary space that I use to get rid of in order to, like, because it can't be on the computer anyway. It's got to be backed up. And I guess what I'm trying to say is a small space is a forcing function to make sure that I back up. Does that make sense? So it's a bit of a foot gun. I totally get that. What really concerned me and why I ended up going around shopping, checking out other stores, is that I really thought that I needed more memory until I realized that the laptop I'm currently struggling with is 16 gigabytes. And that really I probably need about 22. And my work laptop's 32. And I've not run out of memory at all, ever. Which makes me think that at the very worst case scenario, if I happen to be running some software that Matt's involved in, it would run out, depending on the model. Because I still haven't tried Olama. If that was too deep a cut for, we've got Nate here who's chimed in. Sorry, Nate, if that's too deep a cut, my apologies. But Matt's got some software I've been itching to try called Olama. That allows you to run some machine learning stuff pretty easily, which is why I was mentioning Automac 1111 earlier. But I like those kind of just let me try the models. Like I don't want to go forever. But I am actually really interested. I'm not just blowing hot smoke. I'm playing with that because I do feel like this area is something where we should be concentrating, if not developing, then at least knowing what's going on, so I can have an intelligent conversation with people in San Francisco that ask you about their new machine learning startup and what you think about it, which has happened.
Yeah.
But the memory was a concern.
Yeah. For my MacBook Pro, I mean, it's a work laptop, so obviously I didn't pay for it, but I mean, that is a 64 gig in memory on the MacBook Pro with a M1, because that's what was available at the time when I got it. And but I am always running out of disk space, and there's not, and I mean, I've got the 4 terabytes, and I'm always running out.
You're doing
video and these models get to be enormous, and I'm doing conversion of some models on my machine, so very little of it is like stuff that, I mean, it's all stuff that's actively being worked on now, and it's
not a lot of it's
using up 4 terabytes. And so
now, do you use like those Thunderbolt disks? Because that's, unfortunately, you can tell because you found the problem already. That's where I've landed. Is like I've got Thunderbolt spare disks that I'll pop in.
I have one. I have 2. I have 3, 4. I don't know, a bunch. One that still has a Datadog sticker on it, because it was a Datadog one that they bought. And that a couple of those are like 1 terabyte, And then I've got one that I always carry around with me. That's a 2 or 4 terabyte SanDisk Ultra Extreme something. And I haven't. I don't have any like desktop kind of external drives anymore. I used to. I used to have like the who is it? G drive, G something
I think it was
that
G Drive. Yeah,
got
they have
bought
that
out
sort of
by
Mac
Logitech,
looking.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They sort of look like Macs, but they're not.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
weren't LaCie. They were like the
No.
other the other
Yeah.
LaCie. Yeah. Yeah, they had G Raids or something like that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
I
not
guess
bad. Yeah.
I do have one desktop one upstairs that is I think 2 or 4 SSDs RAID 0 because I'm
Oh wow.
backing everything up to Backblaze and somewhere else. I can't remember what I'm doing. But there's 2 places it's being backed up to, so I don't really care if it's I want to use maximum is it RAID 0 or is it RAID? Wow,
It's probably RAID 0 based on what you just
yeah.
told me. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's great. But yeah, that's the only external. I mean, I used to have a whole bunch.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of like those Western Digital book whatevers,
Right.
and yeah,
So
anything
I've
just
gotten
to
away
add
from
some more
those.
space. Yeah.
I think I've settled on like those Samsung T3, T5,
Yep.
T7 kind of drives. They're not Thunderbolt, they're
Yeah.
USB-C kind of thing, but they're 10 gigabit drive,
Yeah.
10 gigabits a second. They generally give me almost a gigabyte read write, which is pretty good, like 700, 800, which is like really good. It's not half as fast as the stuff on the Mac or the Mac
Right.
Studio in this case. But I have noticed my old laptop, unfortunately, the internal memory seems to be getting slower. The internal storage, sorry, it seems to actually be
Right.
getting slower, which is unfortunate. And it seems to be a symptom of this era of laptop. But I've beat it to death. I've had it since 2015, I think. So it's it's time to go.
Yeah.
What are you gonna
do? Yeah.
The only other thing I sent your way was this PDF, but I'm not sure if you had a chance to look
I
at it.
did.
Did you? Okay.
I did.
Oh yeah, I did, and I have opinions.
Yeah, it's not very good. It's got flaws.
Yeah, I know some of the people who made it, so I feel like I also didn't participate.
So did you tell them why it's wrong?
No, and I feel like I feel like you might know some of the same people. So I
do.
Like you might know, at least some of these names here on this list. Yes.
Yes.
I do think it's important for us to talk. So we're talking about the Common Room 2023 Developer Relations Compensation and Cultural Report. I think the compensation part specifically is what rubbed me the wrong way and why I didn't participate, because there aren't a lot of people in DevRel. I've said this before. The culture side is also difficult because I'm not sure the community agrees on where DevRel should sit in a company. And specifically, I might be in a minority in that I feel like we should be around engineering. So big hot take here, at least for me. I'm sure you've heard this before. You seem to agree, which is awesome. On top of this, there's some other conclusions which they're probably the same conclusions that you and I might not agree on, but like, yeah, I guess the angle for a lot of this is the opposite of what I think. So it's a good exercise to like read, maybe not a political opinion that disagrees with you, but like the other side of the story, because I feel like I'm stuck in that echo chamber of people who agree with me. So it is good to see somebody who's talking about DevRel more from a marketing standpoint. And I think you mentioned a little bit before the show about metrics and how to apply metrics to DevRel. And then they don't mention it here, but I think the extension of this is like DevRel qualified leads. And just to explain that for those who haven't heard it before, there's something called like a marketing qualified lead. So somebody's attended a marketing event, they express interest, and therefore they'll hand it off to the sales staff. Typically, I think they're called ISRs, the people who actually call, like the cold calls kind of thing, which you've probably had before after going to a webinar or what have you. That kind of the business has been around for a while. What they're saying is in DevRel, if you've got a similar thing like a talk at a show, you would maybe scan a badge and then hand it off to sales to follow up with later. I think this is going down that path. I'm not saying I disagree with it. I just feel like that's more pre-sales, and that's what I try to avoid personally.
Right.
Just in terms of like the fix. The other is there's like a conclusion between the line of that DevRel is really important in early stage and really big like hyperscaler companies, but in the middle doesn't seem to have a lot of value. And I might actually agree. I'm not sure, but that conclusion that I'm drawing out of this is sort of where people are currently hired and the size of their companies. So it's pretty far down the report, but the conclusion seems to be not written down that where people are currently working are sort of that early stage. So you can be like DevRel team of 1, or they're working maybe on a bigger team. So a DevRel team of like 20, 30, et cetera, like larger for the hyperscalers. So like an Azure or a GCP or an AWS, which I think also tracks. We've seen that for sure. But the medium, the middle bits of the people who maybe they've got APIs that people consume, but they're only 2,000 employees. Like I feel like DevRel is actually pretty important there too, but it doesn't seem like the numbers agree with me. So,
well, my biggest beef with this report is they've created a report, but they didn't get many people to respond to it.
Right? Do they say the sample size anywhere?
Yeah, 136 people.
Oh, okay, great. Because based on the numbers, I assumed it was just over 100. I said 120 in the meeting earlier. Okay, good. Because it seems obvious that it's not a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, because like one person answers that they're from country X, and therefore 1% of all. It's like, well, no.
Yeah. How many DevRel people are in Canada, and do I want to tell people how much I make? I know this is going to be obvious, and I'm not saying I make too much or too little, but like honestly, I don't want to be involved in these numbers at all. Like I don't want to. It's not statistically significant, or it's too statistically significant for me to add my data to this. Unfortunately, it's obvious to me like who the DevRel people are in Canada.
Yeah. So. I think very little of value. I mean, it's interesting to see, but very little of value can come out of this. I don't know why they bought. I mean, I think it's good that they bothered, and when enough people participate in future ones, then it'll become a little bit more relevant. But for now, I mean, it's just not much.
Yeah, and also the changes year to year are extreme because there's so few participants.
So few. In fact, there's fewer people this year than there were last year.
I didn't know that either. But
it does. Last year was 140 something, and this year 136, 147 versus 136, which is a significant drop.
It is. Yeah,
it's only 9 people, but it's us or 11 people.
Yeah, it's almost 10%.
Yeah.
It's like it's statistically significant, and therefore like the things that specifically to me it was around what you do day to day or what you consider tasks of DevRel, and it looked like from last year to this year a complete change of guard happened around like docs and training, which I feel like are a key portion of the job. Maybe you're not writing the docs or doing the training, but at least being involved in how people consume it and the feedback I think is really key. Again, as somebody who works for a company where I think this is
it depends on where your company is, at what stage your company is. I mean, when I was hired by Datadog and I was the first evangelist / DevRel / whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Did
you do all the docs?
I also owned documentation.
That's what I thought.
I was all the docs, and then I created a training department. So I did all those things.
Now flip it on its head. If you're at Google or Azure and you're not involved in at least reading the docs or like helping with the quality of them, to me, again, I realize I have friends who work there, but it feels like a fail because like if somebody who's trying to have empathy for your users or your clients or what have you, potential people in the community would look at maybe just your open source README. It feels like you should know this. And I do struggle. Datadog's big. We've got a lot of different products.
Datadog is, I mean, there's I don't know, 20, 30 people just focus on documentation. But I mean, up until the day I left, I'm still reading the docs. I'm like I'm considering myself user number 1 like first user, and let me verify that things work. And when they don't, make sure people know about it.
I know. And I realize, again, this might be something that... Oh, go ahead.
I gotta take a call real quick.
Oh, no problem. So while Matt's got a call, I'll quickly talk through the problem space.
keep
So
talking.
I feel, yeah, I can do it. So I feel like in the DevRel space, basically, when you've got documentation that you're trying to put out there to get people to try new features or try a new integration or try something with somebody else, if you're not going through and testing them on a regular basis, it's not like a fail or anything like that, but it's one of those opportunities that I'd be surprised that other people aren't taking. And I guess in this report, what surprised me is that the people who thought that they should create more educational content and resources was higher last year than it is this year. And I felt like it should only increase and not decrease. The other was developing in-person talks and workshops was also quite a bit higher last year, around 64% compared to 50% this year. And for me, those feel like the two big major tasks. The next one down the list was build and manage community programs. So that was 43% last year and 35% this year. Again, it could be that the respondents were different, so it's a different feel. I'm not sure I put this on number 3, but it's definitely like top 5 or top 10 in terms of what you're doing is fostering and building a community. So it felt weird to me that there'd be that big of a change in those top 3 specifically, because those do feel like a key part of the role, if not the key parts of the role. Again, I'm pretty new to DevRel. It's only been 3 years and a half, but it does feel like those are important. Now, the one that also went down quite a bit is build brand awareness and affinity. And this might be something that's more along in other people's minds, like a field CTO position or something like that. But I do feel like the modern take on DevRel is around this, is that we actually do want to build that brand awareness. So for example, in my role, it might be people will come up to you and say, hey, why would I need monitoring? My clients will let me know when my things are down, which I've heard before. It totally makes sense. And it might not be that we're building awareness around the brand. It could be more about the product. This switch gears a little bit. Something around the cloud would be the same. Like, why would I need a cloud? I have a data center. I spent a bunch of money in it. Why would I want to put anything in the cloud? Those kind of questions feel like things that in DevRel you get on a regular basis. So like, why would I use Twilio instead of sending out manual text messages on my own? Or like, why wouldn't I use a different product or a different focus, that kind of thing? It feels like to me, those are key parts of the role. And it's really surprising that they decreased. Now, the ones that increased were manage a team and set strategy and report to stakeholders, which went from not available because they weren't there last year to 23 and 23%.
Okay, sorry about that.
No worries. I was just going over those roles. So like, of all the things that I think are like important to the roles, they all went down. So like create educational content, we talked about. Deliver in-person talks and workshops also went down. And then what was the most important one? Yeah, build brand awareness and affinity, which is further down on the list, but also went down quite a bit. And those feel like the top 3 things that this role does, which is amazing to me. And the ones that increased were brand new this year, which is maybe unfair, but they're manage a team. Okay. And then there's set strategy and report to stakeholders. Again, okay. But I feel like those are also ran tasks. They're not the key tasks.
Right.
So very, very surprising to me to see these kind of flip-flop in different areas, but that I think are key to the role. And again, that's my myopic understanding of the role. Only been in this industry or this part of the industry for about 3.5 years, maybe 4.
Right.
But it does feel like in all my reading and searching that those 3 are really key. Like that's what you're supposed to be doing on a regular basis.
Right.
If there's one thing you should do, it's like create content. I don't think many people would disagree. What type of content doesn't matter. Is somebody else delivering it? Doesn't
depends
matter.
on your skill set. Was what kind? Yeah.
Absolutely. And then the other is like talks and workshops. I mean, you don't need to be delivering them. Maybe somebody else is delivering them. You're ghostwriting, whatever. But like that, it's like a tangible thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
Again, maybe you're not getting leads or what have you, but like you're actually like creating new content about your product and maybe something else or maybe some other scenario. But you've got like a flywheel going that gets new content out there on a regular basis. I was just flabbergasted that this shouldn't be higher on the list, because to me it's like the key role.
And throwing manage a team. Well, only if you're a manager.
Right.
I mean, okay, there's managers that are going to be doing that, but most people aren't going to be doing that. So does this mean like...
Well, we know 30% of the respondents are managers.
So it's like, well, that's silly to put here. And all those other things I mean, sometimes people will say, oh, well, evangelism is very different from developer relations because they don't bring feedback from outside users to inside. What What kind of
Yeah,
ridiculous statement is that? Of course, they're exactly the same thing. It's just a different word for the same thing. And so, as an evangelist, I do all these things,
of
except
course.
I wasn't a manager, so I didn't manage a team. I mean, I was the team was one, and I was the only evangelist
Manage your own tasks,
/ community
hopefully.
/ DevRel. Then I managed myself, yes, but and set strategy and reported to stakeholders because my boss was the founder of the company, and yeah, so yeah.
And maybe that's why it was added, because there are like smaller teams. You could tell that in terms of the mix, it was either you're on a big team or a really tiny team. So it could be that the people responding were on smaller teams and it was important. I get that part. It just seems like it came out of left field.
What you doing?
And then just moving on here. Mama? So the next one is primary business objectives for DevRel roles. And it seems to disagree.
What's that? Which one?
The primary business objectives for DevRel roles seems to disagree with like what we just talked about.
Yeah.
Because if your primary role and responsibility is something, and then the next one is the business objectives, it would make me wonder why you aren't following the business objectives. Like there seems like there's a disconnect between question 5 and question 6. And maybe the report is trying to prove that there is a disconnect, but to me, it feels like if product awareness is number 1 here, you would assume that build brand awareness and affinity is like what you're working on. And if you're not, like it's that's like you can't. Do you blame the company? Do you manage up? Like what needs to happen here? But like there's definitely like the goals are different. And if that's like your chief goal, then there's a big problem to me.
Yeah. Did it already?
You're at 5. We skipped over the compensation, but I think I said why. But then there's DevRel by industry and number 1. I'm not sure if that was interesting to you or not. But B2B SaaS definitely feels like it's big.
Yeah, Stell. You can have that box. Okay. I'm on a call right now. Can I come out and play with you a little bit later?
I just need one more box.
One more box? How about this box?
Boxes.
That's the perfect size.
Okay, perfect. Need help opening that door? Okay. Squeeze out. Okay. Okay. Bye.
So cute.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So
that felt like the developer coming to me asking for more VMs. You know, I just need one more box. I need to run my database. One more test box. So the first one was DevRel by industry, and I think the biggest one was B2B SaaS, and then cloud infrastructure. Maybe those could be interchangeable because I feel like a lot of the B2B stuff might be that, but software that you pay for on a regular basis or cloud stuff. Sure.
Right.
The next is B2C software, so business directly to consumer. So, for example, at Samsung, we did B2C, so we made phones that consumers bought. No problem. We also made software that we sold to people that would be used for people's B2B2C kind of stuff. But then we've got like data and machine learning. I thought this would be a lot higher, actually. And then we've got Web3 and crypto, which I also thought would be higher. But then we've got fintech, and I feel like the people who call themselves fintech versus Web3, maybe that's where I was surprised. But then we've got 10% of other. It just seems to me that fintech would be higher, and it was last year compared to this year. And Web3 and crypto was higher this year than it was last year, which it seems like the reverse. In terms of hype cycle, it felt like Web3 is dying down, and fintech seems to be getting hotter. That's just my pulse take on the industry. And then data and machine learning, like I thought right around when this was given out, which I think was last winter, that would have been higher because it was starting to kick off into high gear around then. But again, what do I know? It seems contrary to a lot of what I've seen, which is, again, it could be the sample size that people ask. So maybe we just need more people to answer this or get more people in the industry, because it does feel nascent. Like it does feel like something that's not, there's not thousands of DevRel people in the world. There are 1,000 of DevRel people in the world, I think, based on like Twitter groups and stuff.
I don't know.
2000?
I mean, it's...
How big is DevRelCon? Have you been?
No.
Okay. I think it's 2,000 people. I'll ask Taiji, because he was at the last Tokyo one, but I feel like it's 2,000. Like,
I but I mean, so many people don't go I mean, not everybody who's uses AWS goes to reInvent.
True.
So few
And what's
people.
reInvent? 60,000?
Yeah.
Is it?
No, it was
50?
60,000 at its height, I think.
Okay. Okay.
And I wouldn't. How many users of AWS are there?
Way more than that.
60 million, 6 million.
6 million sounds better. I don't know. Order of magnitude. 5
Oh.
mil, 5 mil, 10 mil, 20.
I don't know.
No,
I mean,
let's just say in the millions. In the
Yeah.
millions.
Millions.
So in terms of the amount of people that showed up, like a small, much smaller percentage of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Similarly at Google
And so
Cloud Next,
if 2,000 people showed up at a DevRel con, does that mean there's 200,000 DevRel people?
No, I feel like there's just 2,000 and they all showed up.
I mean, that's
it might sound like I'm joking, but I think
that's
the DevRel people actually go.
That's a conference I've never heard of.
Ah, okay, maybe that's a good data point then.
So, or
it is a bit.
Is that the one from just like a few days ago that caused all sorts of drama?
I hope not.
There was drama. There was drama at the one in London.
Oh no! Oh no! Are you finding about this drama? There was one 6 days ago.
Yeah.
Oh,
there was drama.
I don't know if we need to gossip.
We don't need to go into drama now.
But so this is Hoopy though, who runs this conference, and Hoopy was involved in this report to tie it back. So Hoopy was, as far as I know, they gave some data here because they thanked them for something in here. Yeah, and the developerrelations.com team at Hoopy for the contributions to this product. I report right at the end, so there's something involved.
There was one, apparently a speaker that is considered to have perhaps breached code of conduct on stage.
That's never good.
Yeah,
that's never good. And honestly, within the industry, there shouldn't even be a question. So
yeah,
if there is a question, it means like, yeah, it probably needs to be addressed for sure. That's really too bad. Wow.
But no details are available unless you were in the room. So
fair enough. I guess what I'd say though is the fact that you don't know about it to me tells me that it's a smaller conference, and perhaps let's just say we're off by an order of magnitude. So let's say there's 20,000 DevRel people in the world. We could even say 10 just to like the order of magnitude, right? So we've gone from 1,000 to thousands in the tens in the world, and we've got 140 people who responded last year, and 120-ish this year. So it's a pretty small number. It might still be enough to be significant. Perhaps not by country, which is where I had the biggest issue last year and again this year, but that's why I didn't reply, because there just aren't a lot of DevRel people in Canada, like tens, definitely tens, not more than tens. There aren't hundreds, unfortunately.
No,
there may be people who work for other companies in Canada, and then maybe we're approaching like 1,000, but again, I highly doubt it.
Right.
Just gonna call it out. So I guess that's where I get a little bit concerned about the people responding. But there are good sections in here that talk about burnout and well-being that I thought were a good thing to bring out, because depending on the person in this role, a lot of us seem to just be those like self-starter kind of work on stuff. Like you were saying, you were working on your other computer just before, lost track of time. That happens to me all the time. Like I'll have a 1 hour day, full disclosure, where like I do some thinking and stuff like that, and don't get a lot done, and I feel bad. And then I'll have the other days where I'm just, like we said, firing on all cylinders, working 14 hours, and then I get a little bit burnt out after the conference, that kind of stuff. So there's always like downtime built into talking.
I mean, I would say when I was at, I mean, I have more, I feel like I'm a little bit more productive now at Infra. I mean, there were definitely certain times at Datadog where, I might not get anything done for like a week, but then there were other like 3-week periods where I'm like, I am fully on and sprinting for, 12 hours a day for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and it like all evens out over time. But
I also think if you're new to the role, and specifically when I was new to the role, I didn't realize that it's very spurty, because I was used to I guess regular interrupt kind of driven
Right.
operations
Right.
work where things would break, and hopefully they don't break too often, but at least
Yeah.
once a week something would happen that you'd have to break fix. And it's just a little bit different in DevRel, so that your busy
Right.
periods are very busy and your not busy periods feel like
Yeah.
you should be doing other stuff, working on talks, like watching YouTube videos, whatever. I know that doesn't sound like
Right.
work, but it is important to be part of the conversation. And that if you don't know how to deal with those times, it can be difficult. And there's not a lot of support because there's not a lot of people in terms of like mentorship outside of it. So it does feel like.
I think
Go ahead.
one of the problems here is that this role has kind of transitioned over time. The role has existed for, I mean, the first one I knew
At
of
least 30
was
years.
25, 30 years ago.
Right.
Maybe it's a 40-year-old role.
What's Kawasaki, right? At Apple is the first one I heard of.
Apple, yeah. And I mean, I knew of them, a few folks with this role at Microsoft when I was at Microsoft in, that would have been late 90s. So, and that's when I decided I wanted that role. Actually, no, I knew people because I got the Techno-Evangelist domain for back in probably 85, 86, 87. And so I known of people in that role since that time. But early on, I think the idea of somebody in this role who is, this is their first role out of college or out of school, whatever school you end up at, maybe only went up to high school, so first job out of, high school or college, that is kind of a newer idea. In the past, I feel like up until, say 5, 6, 7 years ago, this role was always, the role you have after many years in working life. And the idea of there being new people that are fresh out of whatever school that is, a school level, that's a new thing. And so therefore they aren't as adjusted to, well, what is a good working style? How much do you need to prove yourself?
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that wrinkle because a lot of the respondents in this report are actually pretty new to the industry. It looks like, like a third at least, which that totally makes sense. Because I was thinking, as you sort of mentioned, that they might be new to the role but also senior. But you're right, in the numbers, it looks like actually a lot of the people in the role, because like I've got 20 years industry experience, right? So I identify with the tail of this list, but there actually were quite a few people who were brand new to the industry, which is that's a different play for sure. Anyway, great report. I like, not saying I agree with all the conclusions. The fact that we're doing something I think is better, having some numbers for sure. The conclusions themselves, I don't think were like off base for the numbers, which is good, because we have seen reports where the conclusions just don't seem to match the numbers, which is never good. But definitely worth a read. And I think if you're in the industry, participating would be helpful. I think you can opt out of some of the questions if you don't want to. That's what they told me to do this year. I did not. But I feel like, this is certainly, there are areas of this industry where I feel like we need to shine a light on. And one of them is that well-being and mental health for sure.
Right. I'm just going through, are there any other bits that I so did you say that there was something that talked about where this role fits within the organization?
I'm trying to find it. My apologies,
because I was like scrolling through because I thought that was like, I feel like that was in here, and that's interesting. And yet I can't find it.
I also can't find it. Did I just assume? Shoot. Oh no. This is just like, battle in my brain here.
Okay, so
it's industry, title, business size. Oh shoot. This is what happens when you get pundits reading reports. Oh, here we go. I did find it. It is on page 22 under department team reports due. And you'll see that my opinion is unfortunately the minority. I also, and I'm coming around to it.
This, oh my God, this drove me nuts.
Okay, it's all right, but like engineering and product, I might be okay with.
Hold on, no.
Products under engineering.
Developer relations reports into a developer relations team. Well, what kind of stupid answer is that?
Well, community's in there, but like, where's community?
Well,
like,
yeah, I mean that's what the question is. Where does these people that are in this role? Where do they do they go up into? It's not didn't go into developer relations. That's just or community. Yes, I mean if I were to answer this when I was still at Datadog, would I answer the community team? No, I'd say engineering because it's in the engineering. I mean that's what the question's about. Where does are you in the engineering side or the marketing side? And the fact that there's a large number of people where this reports into marketing. I mean that is a first sign that this is a sign that you need to find a job in another place because they don't get it. There's no reason DevRel should ever be in marketing.
But a lot of the cloud or hyperscaler companies, I think, do have DevRel under marketing, and there's a lot of them.
I interviewed with a bunch, and that's why I said no to them. It's like, oh, obviously you don't get it.
Right? I've also had those conversations. I try not to be flip, but like it does feel like a fundamental misunderstanding.
There's a fundamental misunderstanding of the role. And I think,
Now product is in here though, which I thought is interesting. I think product's under engineering in most places.
I mean, I feel like there's three answers to this question.
there's like two. You're either agreeing with Matt or not agreeing with Matt. What are the three?
The three are marketing, sales, engineering, and maybe other, or maybe like that direct report to the founders or chief
so like
CXOs.
HashiCorp might have a field CTO, or sorry, Confluent might have a field CTO, for example, who's doing a lot of tech evangelist kind of work.
Yes.
And I think they report directly to the office of the CEO.
And that would be maybe four groups would make sense.
Right.
Maybe another. I don't know. But I feel like this really should have, to be useful, this question should have had four things: marketing, sales, engineering, and
now we're talking department. So other department, so maybe sales. What other department? Like in your average B2B SaaS or B2C SaaS, what other department is there? And also, is DevRel a department? Is developer advocacy a department? Is it a community? Like, it depends on the company size, right? Is community a department? Like this
it's a bad question. And I think maybe
it was open-ended. I don't know.
Yeah.
And maybe they stuck them all together.
I think like the serverless report at Datadog, one thing that was so unusual about that report is that from day one, they got questions that were good. Good questions, and it's so hard. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been involved with developing a survey. It's really hard to get questions right, and it's I mean the fact that they've left this as this kind of open-ended, and they got so many people that said, "I'm a DevRel, so I've reported to a DevRel." It's like, no, it's not the question.
Like, at what size company would you be where you have a DevRel department, but that you're not related to engineering? Like, that's a specific size company. Is this 200, like 200, 300 kind of thing? Like what maturity level would you be at where your engineering isn't developed as strongly as like your sales, marketing, and DevRel to me? Because that's what it seems to indicate to me.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's odd. When I was hired at Datadog, I mean, I was the first person in this role, and I reported to Alexi, the CEO or CTO?
Yes, I mean, that was CTO, which even though you had a different name, like traditionally, that's what we call it. So you spoke with clients, you took their feedback, you helped with documentation, like you did all of the hats,
all the things. Yeah. And
you weren't attached to sales. You weren't attached to marketing. No. What you were doing wasn't marketing. Was it engineering? Maybe not, but you definitely reported to the office of the CEO.
At the same time, I did things for all those groups.
Of course.
And so as that person in that role, I did pre-sales because I joined a sales team to a new call. And I generated a lot of marketing materials. Like 90% of the videos for the first 5 years of Datadog were you looking at my face. And engineering, I mean, I was writing all the code samples in the documentation, so I was I was doing a bit of engineering too, and
this is
a
why
lot
it
of
took
other
10 years
tools.
to get off the ground. I'm just teasing. I was certainly a user back then, so I really appreciate like the care that it takes to go through. Even back then, 10 years ago, Datadog had a lot of stuff. I think there were like 10 integrations, but the documentation for like the Nagios integration was like 5 pages long because it was pretty serious. But again, like you're in a DevRel department, you're like a contributor in IC, essentially. It just seems odd to me. But
I guess that's the other team that it could potentially be part of is IT/DevOps kind of thing. That kind of makes sense as well. So maybe there's 5 buckets that should have been here, not DevRel reporting to DevRel.
Which seems odd. And right to the right of it, though, it gives a little bit of indicators. Like there are some teams that are more than 50, right? Which is that's a really big team. I don't know which teams these are, but those are big.
Well, it depends on what team means. And I would say, I mean, the community
team, right?
The community team, where team is a group of people that do that are in a certain function. I mean, that team includes documentation and training and whatever the term for us. And that's got to be 50, 60 people.
It is. Yeah. But it's referred to as a department, or that's kind of what I'm getting at. It's like
that is a,
it's like a category, or
I mean, it's a category of a role category or something.
Yeah, we need to pull out the Venn diagrams here.
Like
something's going on. But the other thing that surprised me,
the fact that people can't agree on what a department or a team is means that this is a bad question.
Right. But I would assume there's an average software company that needs like an average DevRel person to help, or people to help. And that's what I'm thinking about. Like, what does this look like? The median, or was it like the sort of normal kind of thing? Like, but the size of team, just me, is 20%. So that's at least it's 18.5, but that's like 20 people.
Yeah.
Based on it's like single people teams. So 20%, what does that line up to? I mean, just pick one of these numbers. That's portions of some of these numbers.
Right.
Like it's a team of 1 reporting to like department team, I guess is what's really throwing us off. Because it's both words together. And then the next one is, has your team experienced layoffs in the last 12 months? And I think I'm seeing this in the industry, is that it feels like when there are layoffs to happen, this is one of the first teams to be looked at. And I guess the reason this is important to me is kind of the same thing I say all the time. Like, you need to be able to show results. If your goal, your big goal is to increase brand awareness, I'm not saying you need to have DevRel qualified leads, but you at least need to be able to have some sort of number like out there. Like, I spoke to 1,500 people today, 1,000 people. I'm not saying that I reached them all or collected emails or anything like that.
I've never collected anything like that.
But your outreach, could you at least say, like, when you're like, this many people clicked on the link? Nothing like that.
No.
Nothing
if there is a metric associated with my role in this particular kind of role. No, I mean, it's absolutely, metrics should exist for marketing and engineering and sales.
That's what I'm getting at. Yeah, I think you're getting at something else.
Yeah. But if there is a metric or a set of metrics associated with this particular role, then that is a sign that, well, somebody wants to get rid of your job, and it'll be gotten rid of pretty soon. And you better start looking for a company that gets it, what this role really is for.
Right. Or you're new to the role. There's one of you
to the role.
Yeah, and you think this is normal, and you go through it, and you're in a different department. Maybe you're associated with sales. That kind of stuff is what this speaks to for me. Is like that lack of understanding of where we go. The other is, if
this is your job and you're being told this,
you got a quota or something,
or metrics. It's like, well, yeah, okay, that makes sense but.
Yeah, it's weird. And if you're senior in this role, I would assume for you, and definitely for me, if you give me a metric or a quota, I will find a way to
Oh
I'm
yeah,
not saying fudge the
you can
numbers,
generate. Yeah, I mean, if there's a
get those
number that
numbers.
says how many people did you touch, it's like, well, I can generate all sorts of numbers.
Like, what is the thing that Corey Quinn says about Datadog? They got their scanners and they're pointing like across the room trying to do it. And it's like, yeah, because these people are coin
Yeah.
operated and they're rewarded by the amount of
Yeah.
scans that they get. This is very important, and because of that, they're going to put their game face on and
Right.
scan stuff. If this is the goal, they
Right.
will achieve the goal. I
Right.
think is very important. But if
Especially
it's something
since it's important. I think one thing that somebody mentioned on the DevRel Slack a few days ago, and you mentioned at the beginning, and I think I wasn't quite listening when you were defining it, of a DevRel qualified lead or something like that.
Yeah.
Well,
if this comes up, run far away.
Yeah. I mean, if anybody I talk to, for anybody I talk to in any, the role that I have at any companies I've had, that contact will never ever find its way from me to sales.
Right.
It should there should never be a connection between me talking to somebody and that generating a lead for a salesperson to call. Now, sales may get that name from somebody else, because the fact that they attended the talk and the conference organizer shares all the people that came through the door, shares them with sales, that's fine. But the fact that they had a 20-minute conversation after the fact and showed extreme interest in the product, that idea will never make its way to sales.
Right. Or just I don't want to be like, what is the devil's advocate or whatever, but I can think of a scenario where they say like, yes, I'd like to talk someone in sales.
Oh yeah.
It's obvious. It's a warm handoff. Everybody knows it's fine. But if I have my email address, like let's say ryan@gmail.com, and I've got Ryan plus Matt Datadog at gmail.com, and that lands in a salesperson's queue, then I know Matt's handed it off, and it's not good. Like, I will know. And the reason we're saying this is important, I think, is for me, it's like it erodes trust. And one of the big parts of this position and this role is to build that trust. And I'm not saying like in a disingenuous way. I mean like by literally being yourself, being interested and getting people interested in what you're talking about, I think is super, super key. Because I feel like it might be different in marketing and sales. Not to paint them with a bad brush, but like their incentives are different, their goals are different, their outcomes are different.
One of the books that was required reading when I was at Microsoft was, I can't remember the title of it, but it was something about the trusted advisor, being the trusted advisor, and it might have been called Trusted Advisor.
Right.
The idea there is that you should always answer any question as honestly as possible, even if that is saying that your product is the wrong product for the customer. Right. And so that you should be that trusted advisor, the person that customer goes to when they have a question about, well, even about questions about things that are unrelated to what we do. And so, it was often, as somebody who was, for a while, I was a product manager in SharePoint, a product manager in BizTalk, but then I was out in the field. And if somebody came to me with a question about, what's the best way of sharing information through a team, even though I might have represented in the past SharePoint, and I'm still my job is relying on how many at the time, how many people were signing, how many of these enterprise customers were signing on to enterprise agreement, the EA. I don't know if that's still what they called,
it's still
my goal is to get them to be on SharePoint, but if they ask a question where SharePoint's not the answer, and maybe it was, well, it should never be content server from OpenText, but if it was that, then I should say, well, maybe you want to look at content server from OpenText or content, whatever it's called,
or Alfresco, or whatever,
some other tool, and I should tell them that, and that way they keep thinking of me as that trusted advisor. And whether I am at Microsoft today, or I'm at Datadog, or at wherever I am, my reputation continues, and so I should always be that trusted advisor.
Right.
Even if,
and again, I'm trying to be nice to sales, but like having been in sales before, I feel like this is not necessarily the goal in sales. The goal in sales generally is to make the sale and move on to the next quarter. Now, if they have problems with the sale, that's last quarter problem. kind of thing, which is
I
unfortunately
mean,
very myopic in thinking.
there were so many people I like at Datadog and at other companies where they have a phenomenal quarter and they like are the most prized possession of the company.
Right.
And then the next quarter, they don't make any sales. They're done.
Right.
Time to find another job because you can't.
Right.
I don't care what you did last quarter. This quarter, you're not doing very well. It's time to go.
And honestly, the good salespeople that I've met have
Yeah.
like a network that they take with them
Yeah.
from job to job. And I feel like the rookies, maybe the greenhorns, the people who are newer
Yeah.
to sales don't get that yet. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, like they don't work the network. But in tech evangelism or DevRel, like the network is very important. It
Yeah.
took me a while to come around to realizing that like
Yeah.
it's not your followers on Twitter or like who you know on LinkedIn or anything like that. It's actually the personal connections that you
Right.
have to people that you can vouch for or who will
Mhm.
vouch for you. Or if you reach out last minute, like,
Yeah.
hey, want a free hotel room and stay in San Francisco? You just got to get on stage for 20 minutes. Like if you can reach out to people like that and
Yeah.
get them to come up and talk with you,
Yeah.
phenomenal. It's like
Yeah.
a massive leg up. And I had no
Yeah.
idea that like using
Yeah.
your network, not using, but like working with your network
Right.
to get
Yeah.
results. It's like it's such a game changer. But
Yeah.
again, like if you're not building that trust, you're not going to get it. And
Yeah.
it's just like there's a whole portion of the position
Yeah.
that's missing. It was amazing for me to like speak at Google Cloud Next and
Mhm.
talk about Samsung and tagging issues and metadata issues that we
Mhm.
had at Samsung, get off the stage, and someone who's now at Sendbird, who used to be at Samsung and worked directly with me, saw my talk and like, yeah, we did have problems with that. Like, I'm glad you talked about it. Like,
Yeah.
we didn't go too far into details, but at least talking about what this is
Yeah.
at scale, that's key. And if he didn't say anything and just like wrote a bad review or something like that,
Yeah.
I'd feel awful, like misrepresented what we did at Samsung kind of stuff. Because you could
Right.
do that.
Yeah.
You could say, hey, I was a VP at Samsung, like when you didn't have that
Right.
position at all. But like that trust is so key because like at some point in time, you're going to need those people. And I feel like burning those bridges is just such
Right.
a
Yeah.
it's short-sighted, unfortunately. Anyway, I could rant about this for a while. I do think this is a good report. I might disagree with the findings and the sample size. I think it's good that we're opening the can of worms, basically.
Yeah.
And the more we do this,
Like,
the better.
I mean, I'd say another important one is the page after what we were just on.
Yep.
Perception of importance of DevRel to the company.
Yes.
If it's not mission critical importance, it's your job
What are you
number one
doing?
is to prove to the rest of the company why your whole existence is the most important thing.
Yes.
And so, I mean, it's not a metric. It's because I mean, somebody in sales doesn't care about a metric. They care about, well, maybe they do, but they care about what are the resources that they can leverage of yours, then so that they remember, oh yeah, Matt or DevRel or whatever is really important. Look at these tools that I've been given. I mean, maybe not just sales tools, but just what are the things that you can, maybe it's a video that you can point them
Right.
to, and all those types of things. What are the resources that each group in the company really needs, and make sure you are maybe not producing the end tool, but at least helping provide the assets that they need, so that everybody thinks that you are mission critical importance. Metrics are ridiculous.
I feel like it. Like, okay, so Matt, I asked you a question about your company, and I'm going to calculate how long it took for you to answer. Like, a lot of these are kind of ridiculous,
Yeah.
but I do feel like I agree that metrics are silly, but having some sort of number, for me at least personally, is important. Just to be able to say, like,
Sure.
I've spoken 10 times
Yes.
this year, kind of thing. And it's not that I need to do the same amount next year, but I'm at least
Yes.
keeping track of like what I'm
Yes.
doing.
Oh yeah,
no idea
metrics
how
for
this is
myself, yes.
Right.
Metrics
Personal
for
metrics.
other people at the company to justify my existence, no.
It's hard, yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
I've been lucky, I guess, dealing with demand gen and product managers, not necessarily doing their bidding,
Yeah.
but at least like knowing what's important to them,
Yeah.
and then trying to reflect content in that way. But it can be tough. Yeah. Anyway, we could go on about this one, just like any report
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
quite some time. But I liked it. It definitely got me thinking.
Yeah.
Again, it mostly disagree with it, but at least it was there. I wouldn't have thought of this stuff otherwise.
Yeah.
Did you pick up any new Mac stuff or things that we should know about?
I did.
Any checkouts? Watch new stuff? What do you got?
Uh-oh. Okay, so hold
He
on.
sounds sheepish. Is this another one of those ones where you got to disconnect to find it?
I get disconnect.
All right. We'll play the the Price is Right music while he's gone. Do 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 do. Matt is shuffling around at his work desk. He said he was just until the start of the podcast here. We can hear him shuffling. He is on his way back.
Okay.
He made it.
Okay. So, hold on.
Oh. Matt has now left the building again. He's literally opened the door and left the room, but I assure you, he'll be back momentarily. This is one of those things where sometimes having visual is handy, but he should be back in a second here. All right, and while Matt's gone, oh, there he is. Look at that. He is back. He's got 2 VHS tapes in his hand.
Okay, so.
So those look like VHS tapes, but I don't think they are.
So many years ago.
Yes. VHS. I was right.
No. Many years ago. It doesn't say
far,
a date.
far away.
There was a company. There was a Kickstarter that I backed from a company called ErgoDox.
Oh, yeah.
And so this was the first. This is half of it. So there was.
Didn't you just get a new keyboard?
Yeah. And so there was the ErgoDox, and this is the ErgoDox Easy. It says,
right? Okay.
This is batch 1 of the ErgoDox. Cool. So the original ErgoDox before they had LED backgrounds on here.
Right.
There were no labels on it. And this was great. And it had a nice kind of clicky sound.
It's like stocky.
And and this was actually the model before you could change the switches. So it was like this is all soldered in. And this was great. This was my daily driver for a long time. I'd even pack this with me to take with, because before, before what, 2016, 2018, when they changed the keyboard to the best keyboard, and then they changed it back to the mushy keyboard.
Right.
So on the mushy keyboard,
we're talking about Apple here,
yeah, Apple. That's when I'd use these keyboards, and they were great. And then along came their next keyboard, which was the Planck EZ, which I've.
For those again on audio, we're looking at a 40 key tiny keyboard. It's
this is like their perfect keyboard for a long time. This was like absolutely perfect. It's got those weird bits that look like, I don't know, look like snot. That's just epoxy that I put on there because I couldn't get the little nubby things.
Oh, the home run.
And so this was my daily driver for a long time, and then they came out with the Moonlander,
right?
Which is also really great.
ZSA?
This is the same company, ZSA. I've got the tilt tent kit so that it sits like that normally.
That's really
which is really high. And this was also amazing. Now, downside to all these keyboards is they all cost like $300 to $400. So this is
like 500 Canadian, by the way.
Yeah. So this is crazy expensive. But the problem I had with this was that there were too many keys.
Really?
And there were like, most of them I could use, but there would be like 2 or 3 here, 2 or 3 there. That like, well, what do I do with these things? I don't even know what to do with them. And too many buttons on this thumb cluster, and I was always I didn't like the thumb cluster, like extra bits. I didn't know what to do. So just last Tuesday, they announced the how do I hold this up?
It's like the new Moonlander, right?
The Voyager.
My apologies.
So this is the Voyager.
Right. Which is smaller.
So smaller and very similar number of keys available as the Planck.
Right.
And
a bit over 40, right? I think it's 44 because it's got the thumb.
Yeah, because it's got the 2 thumb things. And so it's like the Planck, but they split it up in the middle. Right. And got these thumb clusters. And I'd say this is perfection. It is absolutely perfect. It feels great. I mean, it is there. All the other ones, they felt solid. Like if you drop it, it's going to survive, and it's going to survive a nuclear apocalypse. But it's it felt, I don't know, it just didn't feel it felt like it's super strong, but it didn't feel great. And these feel solid and like
So like build quality.
awesome.
I think, yeah. This is
Yeah, I mean, they were
the
built
mouthfeel of
great.
keyboards. This is the
They
umami.
felt, yeah, I don't know what to,
It's important. It's important when you're using a tool all day
Yeah.
long. It needs to feel good.
and this just feels so perfect. And the fact that I don't know, that had 4 buttons on the thumb. I feel
Right.
like 3 might be good, but 2 is also really good.
Okay.
And
So
you
now we're
notice
caught
that
up to last week.
so yeah, and so this is I've got the 2 buttons here and
Right.
1 button here that are not covered because I don't know what to do with them. And it's kind of a reminder for myself to find something. And that's it. That's why that was my I mentioned it last week that I ordered it, and when I ordered it, it said, okay, 3 weeks for delivery. And then
Oh, sorry, you got it already, right? It's
this is
yeah,
it. This is
yeah.
this is
For
this is
those
not
of
a,
you who have not
this is
ordered
not
a
a
keyboard,
3D mock-up.
yeah, like my brain just clicked in. For those of you
Yeah.
who have not ordered a mechanical
Yeah.
keyboard before, it generally takes
Yeah,
6
I mean this.
months to a year to
So
get like
yeah,
a Kickstarter keyboard,
this thing, they said, okay, well, it'll be 3 weeks, and
which
like
is pretty good.
3 days later, I get
That's amazing.
the shipping announcement from China, saying, okay, it's FedEx has the box
Oh.
from China. From not
Shenzhen.
that's from Taiwan.
Okay.
Should not say China.
No,
But
listen, not even gonna touch that one. Moving on.
yeah. So this is the Voyager, and it is Voyager part number Voyager L00.
Okay, so that tells me a couple things because this is the 5th product they've launched. I feel like they've got their supply chain kind of down.
Yeah.
Science, right?
Yeah.
If they can get that to you from there.
Yeah, and it's the same company. It's the same.
Right.
Tibbo is the actual
Tibbo?
manufacturer.
Yep.
Tibbo.
Mhm.
I mean the company is ZSA, which is I don't know where they're based. And then Tibbo is the manufacturer in Taiwan that they've worked with since the beginning. I think they all say Tibbo on the back.
Totally makes sense to me, honestly. Once you find a partner that works for quality
And
and stuff like that,
yeah. And so this is it just feels awesome. And
I'm looking. I can't see where they're actually based. Actually, I thought they were an American company, but I can't seem to pull it.
Yeah, I don't know. And I was a little bit worried about on the underside are these 2 little magnetic feet.
Yeah,
and I was thinking, well, it's not going to be very good, but it's perfect. It feels awesome. Now, the one thing it comes.
California.
Oh, okay. So they're shipped with keys with the number keys at the top. And the one thing,
sorry, they're Canadian. People gotta stop using CA for Canada. It's confusing, but they're from Toronto, which today I learned. Yeah, there you go. I know another company based in Toronto. I'm not sure if.
Yeah, I think I know them too.
Yeah, there you go. You work there.
I'm wearing the T-shirt.
Yeah.
So I got rid of the numbers at the top, and so I shifted the whole keyboard up so that I've got the bottom row for Command, Option, Control, and other keys. Because it is just 4 rows of keys, unlike most keyboards that will have 5 or 6 because there's number keys and function keys.
Yeah.
But
now, I'm not sure if I showed you my favorite keyboard.
Yeah, no.
You've probably not seen one of these. Now I realize on video it's a little bit hard to see, but if you look at this space bar, you can probably see that there's something weird about this keyboard. Look how small.
I can't quite see the space bar.
Wait. Look at that.
Okay, yeah.
Oh.
Hey.
So
so
yeah. So for some reason, I really like the Shift JIS Japanese layout Mac keyboard. The one that's not mushy, because I agree, I'm not a fan of mush. So the newer one with the lock key or the unlock, if you got a nice fancy one. The thing about Japanese keyboards is they have a small space bar, but they've also got 2 keys to the left and the right of those, which are amazing. On top of which, you don't have to hold Shift to hit the @ symbol, which is key for me. And on top of all of that, where the caps lock is can be made into that is it backtick, which I use all day long. Backtick is like one of my overused keys. Backtick and hash, like for readmes basically. I'm writing docs or notes to myself. And then the enter is ISO enter, so it's larger, so I can smack it with my thumb when I'm using the trackpad. But I've kind of stuck to this layout, and I blame it on the Happy Hacking keyboard, which also has a similar layout. And I've got 4 Happy Hacking keyboards that are Shift GIS that I love. And then for me, the portable version is this. If there was a tented version, like what you're talking about, the similar layout, I'd love it. But I get pinky fatigue basically from holding modifiers. So when you're talking about holding modifiers on your thumbs, that's like that's the next level, right? That's what you want to do, is that big finger that you've got on your hand. Use that more.
So I have
super interesting to me.
So my hands are reversed. This is my right hand. This is my left hand. And if I'm tapping the main key right here, which is like bigger key and a slightly smaller key on the thumbs. So the tapping with the main key is a space, and then the other one, I don't know what that is, but the main key on this hand is backspace, and then the alternate one is enter. Because I feel like I backspace more than I accept or enter.
Backspace is critical though when you're browsing, because I can like destroy a form on you.
But then if I hold down the backspace, then that is command.
Nice.
Where I hold down enter, it is option.
Gotcha.
And so, one thing that the ZSA or ErgoDox keyboards do a lot is, with all of these, there's an auto shift option. So if you hold down the key for longer than like 100 milliseconds or 100, I think it defaults 180 milliseconds, then it will auto shift it. And so I don't have a shift key on my keyboard because it will auto shift, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was one of those kids who, when I first started learning computers, at some point in time, like let's say like a year or 2 years in, decided that everything needed to be lowercase. For like the longest time, I was one of those people who it would just like rare punctuation and lowercase and everything. And after a while, I realized that like that's not it's not user friendly. It's good for me. It's bad for everybody else. So it is better, at least in communication, to do. But I totally appreciate that. The other thing is in macOS, and I think in GNOME as well, you can have it so when you start a sentence, it will make the first character uppercase, which I get can rub people the wrong way, but most of the time it's what you want, and it's actually pretty handy. But I feel like some of that software, some of it's hardware, and some of it's just like convention, unfortunately, when it comes to keyboard.
Right.
Oh, I could talk about keyboards forever. I love this stuff.
I have one other change that I made on this keyboard that I've never done on all the other 3 keyboards. And that is with every other. So I use a keyboard layout called Workman Dead, actually. And so, you can see probably the layout is, it's not QWERTY. There's Q, W. Well, that's not a W. That's on
Q, D, R, W.
Yeah. So that is Workman. And I had set it up so that this is the Q key, this is the D key where the W is, and this is the R key. And that's how I set up the keyboard. Whereas in this one, and then so if I'm using this keyboard, I'm using US layout, and that way the keys are where I expect them to be. But when I pull that thing out, then I'm using the Workman Dead layout, and it remaps the W key to D key and does all that remapping. And on this one, I changed it so that although I'm pressing the D key, that's actually the W key, and that remapping is what remaps it to D. And the benefit is there are some tools that there's a with doing that, there's a which key you're pressing and which key code you're pressing.
Right.
I think there's a difference, and sometimes there's a difference, and sometimes application vendors will use one or the other, and they might use alternate ones in different functions within the application. I have
not seen that, but I've seen one or the other. It's like the ASCII key code, which comes straight from USB, and then or lo and behold, listen to the OS.
And so there are some where it's using whatever is the wrong one to use.
Right.
And so if I'm switching keyboard layouts from my MacBook Pro to this external keyboard layout, well, now the keyboard shortcuts for creating a screenshot are different on each one. I think it's actually Raycast. Raycast does it the wrong way, where it's it will not so it's a different keyboard shortcut for each way. There's a few others. Hook is another one, and there's a few others that
would you
pop
say
up.
you use what's that one, like there's a thing that you use for a lot of like actions and macros, because that I think takes USB scan codes, which is annoying.
For macros like Keyboard Maestro.
Yes, I believe it is
Yeah.
Keyboard Maestro. Well, because when you hit them, it
yeah.
records that you can see
Right.
the scan code
Right.
instead.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Oh,
no.
or is it Carabiner?
A carabiner.
Yeah.
I thought it was Maestro. It might be carabiner.
Yeah.
One of the two will actually take
Yeah.
like scan codes, and it's handy for
Yeah.
sure, because Mac OS does have, like, on this
And
keyboard, it's got a couple that are weird.
One thing that's nice about Carabiner, I've heard both names, is that it will record what the key code, the scan code, whatever the code is for that key, but also say only use this when the USB code is, USB name of the keyboard is this, and
That's a
don't do
good
it
point.
for other keyboards. So that's fine in that case.
Right.
And but now I can switch back and forth, and all the things are going to be a consistent keyboard shortcut because it knows it's remapping from W to D, and it's always going to be consistent. So
I know people are thinking that this is in the weeds, but like, honestly, this is what differentiates some of those like weird keyboards that you see, or like Mac power buttons or volume keys and things like that. Is that they're literally sending different scan codes.
Yeah.
And to be able to have your keyboard recognized to even have these keys, you have to like hijack the USB ID in order to tell the OS that you're allowed
so
to have the keys.
So I have I use an automation tool on my Mac called Hammerspoon, and Hammerspoon will recognize, there's been a change to the USB connect, the things connected via USB. One of them, the one change happens to be that there is now an ErgoDox keyboard attached, so therefore switch my keyboard layout from Workman to US. And then if it sees that it's been disconnected, okay, now change from US back to Workman. But now it'll always be at Workman. I never need to have, unless I plug in this old keyboard.
Right. That's perfect. And how long would you say it normally takes you to like learn, like adjust to a couple different keys? So for me, it's about a month, but I'm also maybe a little bit slower than most people when it comes
to adjust to what? To
so let's say, so let's say you change caps lock to control, for example, which is a pretty common thing. How long does it take you to like adjust to those new keys being mapped? So for example, you're talking about keys and stuff.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have an adjustment because now there's only 2 of these keys for the thumb cluster and versus 4 before. And I'm deciding whether, that bigger key should be backspace or control or carriage return or return.
So you're not even adjusting it. You're still in the tweaking phase, I guess.
I'm going back and forth.
Because
I'm feeling that often I want that bigger one to be return.
Right. That's what I was thinking. I didn't want to say anything, but yeah. It seems like the key that you hit by default should be non-destructive. There should be some sort of safety harness around.
Well,
that's what I was getting at.
I mean, destructive
to me is I filled out a government form in Safari and I hit backspace by mistake, and like something's gonna get hurt.
Or pressing enter might mean it's harder to fix. Maybe a backspace is easier to fix because I can just type that letter again.
Right.
But enter means I need to enter in Slack means, okay, I need to scroll. I need to go up to the previous message, press E to edit, go through, edit my post, change it, and then respond to all the people that are saying I'm an idiot because I've said snickerdoodle instead of whatever I meant to say.
Snickerdoodle.
Yeah.
Agreed. Like enter can be, it's especially if it's like push code to prod or drop databases. Can be destructive for sure. I do like having it in one spot where I just sort of thwack it with my thumb, because it's like it's satisfying, like hanging up a phone used to be, where you could like slam the receiver down. I don't know if you deal with coders who are like, haha, push the button. They hit the button rather dramatically, but I do feel like enter is one of those where
Yeah.
like there's some sort of ceremony involved in hitting it.
Yeah.
It's final, right? Like enter,
Yeah.
return.
So yeah, that's my new thing.
That is awesome. All right, you want to call it there? That was an awesome.
Did you have? Oh, you had your studio.
Yeah. Listen,
Yeah.
I was very excited, so I showed it off right away.
No, that's good. I can't think of anything. I think that was the one thing. I feel like
awesome. That's a big thing.
That's a big thing. That's the kind of thing that you don't that I haven't told my wife yet.
Well, listen, when she watches this episode,
yeah, because she always watches this. Your mother may watch it, but my wife does not.
Should say thanks to Nate for hanging on in the chat. They said,
"Is he still there?"
I believe so.
Those were 2 messages right at near the beginning.
Right at the beginning. So let's assume that they are.
Yeah. Let's assume that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Nate, for sticking around this whole time.
So much. We appreciate the live viewers.
Yes. Okay, shall we find that button?
Let's do it. I think it's on your side this time.
Yeah.